fall of 2020, I had an opportunity to listen in on an interview that a colleague of mine conducted with Mei Mei, who then co-founder and co-CEO of a company called Covax, which had literally just formed up at the time in response to, as its name implies, the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the Business of Biotech podcast was just getting its feet wet back then, but I was super intrigued by the story of how and why Mei Mei jumped into action as a giant global health emergency was just beginning to unfold. And I took a note to get her on the show. I'm not sure why it took us almost 1.5 years, 2 years to do it, but here we are. So on today's show, we're going to get to know Mei Mei and learn about the work she's doing at Vaxxinity, and hopefully get some insight into what inspired her into serial biopharma entrepreneurship after earning a Penn undergrad, a Harvard JD, and earning a few stripes at McKinsey. Since then, Mei Mei has gone into full entrepreneur mode. She's a member of the executive committee of United Biomedical. She oversaw the launch of one of the first endobody vaccines in the world. And with Vaxxinity's IPO on NASDAQ last year, I believe, she's now spun out 5 new companies. Mei Mei, I am super pleased, as I said, to finally have you on the show.
Matt, it's great to be here. Excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. So typically when I do one of these things, like we spend, I don't know, the first 5, 10, 15 minutes kind of learning about the inspiration, the backstory, you know, what brought Mei Mei to this current place and time. But I want to do that a little bit later. I want to shuffle things around a little bit here today, because I think the most intriguing thing that strikes me about Vaxxinity right now, and that's where I want to start in the here and now, are some of the words that the company uses to convey its mission and the work that it's doing. And I want to kind of have a philosophical discussion about those words with you, Mei Mei, if we can, because I see words like democratization and revolution, right? And straight from the top, I want to let's start with democratization. It's not the first time I've seen it, but somehow, I don't know, you guys must have a really crack marketing team, because somehow the words and the text that I read about your approach to democratization on Vaxxinity's website make me believe that it's more than just a public relations platitude or a piece of, you know, marketing hype. Democratization is something we see all the time. It's a formidable challenge. But to my point, the word's kind of been co-opted, right, to the point that it's abused. Mm-hmm. So let's start there. What is and I'm not asking you to justify the use of the word. Don't get me wrong. I want to start by understanding what democratization means to Vaxxinity and why it is so central to the mission and the work going on there.
So it's our North Star, right? It's not a marketing ploy. We talked about it before I started. I don't have a LinkedIn page, so we're not very good at marketing and hyping, but it's the essence of who we are in our business model. Democratization, what does it mean? It means taking something that is otherwise only available to a select few and making it available to everyone, right? It's the democratization of vote, the democratization of books through the printing press, the democratization of cars through Ford's Model T. What we're trying to do is democratize and make one of the most successful class of drugs, biologics, that are currently only available to about 1% of the world's population, and make it accessible, affordable, convenient, effectively available to everyone. That's the essence. And why can we do it, or why do we believe we can do it? It's all based on technology. So I think the core for innovative and exponential technology is the ability to democratize whatever it is that it's working on. And we're just fortunate that we have a technology platform that we believe can do that.
Yeah. When you say it's your North Star, and I want to talk a little bit about sort of like when at form up, and maybe this will get into the backstory. I warned you, Mei Mei, that I'm a nonlinear thinker, and we probably bounce around a lot. So I'm going to let you kind of direct where to start with the response to this question. But when a company forms up, and I know that Vaxxinity is sort of the product of some evolutionary activity, right, from years ago. So maybe you can kind of form that up for us. But when a company starts up, typically in biopharma anyway, a lot of times it's a market opportunity around an indication, or perhaps it's a new piece of science, something coming out of academia, or a platform that can be adopted and leveraged to develop a pipeline. But the concept, I don't think it's common for a startup to have central to its mission sort of this concept of like, maybe we don't even know what we're going to build yet, but we want to go out there and build something that's accessible. So tell me about that. Like how did that North Star kind of come into play at Vaxxinity? When did it become sort of, the North Star?
Yeah. So it's interesting, actually. I'm just sitting here thinking about it. The evolution of Vaxxinity wasn't like a eureka moment, and similar to the North Star of democratization of health. These are things that, for better or for worse, have been evolving over years. So the technology, right? Let's start with that, because that's the basis of any new biotech company.
Yeah.
The technology was originally, it started over 2 decades ago. Came out of Rockefeller University, initially supported by NIH grants, and its first applications was in animal health. Okay, so the first company, United Biomedical, who touched this, was asked in a different pandemic to see if they could develop a vaccine for, foot and mouth disease for livestock. After it became successful, Lou and I became involved and said, wonder if this can work for humans, and how do we prove it out in humans? And through the data, we saw that there was an opportunity to democratize biologics, right? To be able to bring the efficiency of vaccines to chronic disease, which is unique for a vaccine proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's as you explore and unpack things that you begin to find your North Star. Sometimes it's cloudy out there, and it's only when the clouds separate that you can find where it is. And so it was only a few years ago that we said, this technology has a unique application, and that's where kind of the vision of being able to democratize health came about. And the same thing with Vaxxinity. It wasn't just one day we woke up and said, hey, let's start Vaxxinity. It was a big evolution, first from a predecessor company called United Neuroscience, which is the vehicle that we basically explore this platform in chronic diseases for the first time. And we started out with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Very challenging disease areas, but places where we saw massive unmet need and where the vaccine approach was more accepted at the time. And then we started COVAX, like you mentioned, in response to the global pandemic. And when we, realized that COVID wasn't going to leave, it was going to be around with us for a while. That's when we merged the companies into what is now Vaxxinity. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm not great at packaging things, but that's how things evolve, right? It's about figuring it out in the moment, and somehow they come, they coalesce and merge and swirge into where we are today.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I should just note for our listeners' benefit, when you mentioned Lou, you're speaking of Lou Reese, your co-founder and husband. Can I ask you a personal question about you? Like, at what point did you and Lou become partners, husband and wife? Which came first? Kind of how did that relationship come together?
Well, we met originally at Penn, so we've been together for over 20 years. And I think Lou and I are both, we get our hands in a lot of things. And so we're always, for the first time when we met, we always wanted to do stuff together. And so I think we've been working in one capacity or another together since right after college. So he is my partner in crime. And we've kind of founded and started everything, including Vaxxinity together.
Mm-hmm. Is Lou a scientist?
Neither of us are scientists, Matt. Yeah, he's a business school background, and I'm a recovering lawyer. So
yeah. All right. So I want to get back into the technology, but first, since we're there, you're as I mentioned, Harvard JD. Lou's not a scientist. You was McKinsey right after you earned your JD?
Yeah. So that was my first job out of law school.
And what was when you went into McKinsey, did you go right into the life sciences practice there?
No, I thought about it, but I could actually get myself in there. So I ended up working on electric vehicles
Oh,
and other industrials. So probably the exact opposite.
yeah.
But yeah.
At what point, you said you probably would have gone there, but couldn't get yourself in there. And then at what point, I guess, on the continuum, Harvard JD, McKinsey, doing some consulting analyst work, electric vehicles. At what point did you go, you know what, life sciences is where it's at?
Um, well, I'm not sure it was an active decision, but it turned into a life passion. So might
Yeah.
as well evaluate that story. Um, so, while I was at McKinsey, Lou's father passed away suddenly on the river, actually, here in Montana.
Mm.
And, I ended up taking a leave and helping him sort some stuff out. And from there, things, manifested, and I ended up getting myself on the investing side. And then an opportunity came up with United Biomedical, where they needed help with, frankly, a legal issue. And Lou and I just decided, let's try and lend our services and help and restructure this. That led to us discovering the technology, and fast forward, over 10 years now, and that's where Vaxxinity was born out of.
Yeah. That's an interesting story. I always ask these questions as though the assumption is there was some, to your point earlier, I think you used the word aha moment, right? Like there's never an aha moment. I don't know why I set those questions up that way.
Well, we like to package things like that, right? And there are sometimes aha moments, but they're smaller, generally speaking, or they evolve over time. So it's not like a second in time. And I think this if you look back, it's always interesting how we get to where we are. But this was definitely an evolution over many, many years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to get back to this conversation around what I guess set of tools and philosophies, if you will, management style, whatever it might be, sets Vaxxinity up for success in the endeavor to democratize access to biologics, and to the degree that you can that you're willing to share, what those tools look like and what that sort of approach looks like. Obviously you're not going to share the secret sauce with me if there is secret sauce to be shared, because we'll get in trouble with our PR handlers. But any specifics you can offer around, what, as I said, I've had lots of conversations with companies who, I'll give you an example. Not too long ago, I had the CEO of a company on who is developing, I guess, antibodies from, I believe it was antibodies from spirulina, right? Like from algae. And that approach is like, well, hey, there's one avenue to democratizing access to biologics by creating biologic therapies from something that is readily available, easy to grow. Obviously, there's a bunch of steps in between that could cost money, that could, create we could encounter scientific barriers to making it happen. But the concept is super simple. Like, if we can create a medicine from something that anyone can effectively grow in a bioreactor, that's a great big giant step towards democratization. So in your case, I guess, what would be some parallels to that sort of like theoretic, like this is how we're going to be able to crack this nut that's been so difficult to crack. It's so expensive. It's so difficult to move it around the world.
So conceptually, it's super easy, right? Biologics are difficult right now because they're difficult to make. They require these massive bioreactors and CapEx. They're difficult to take because you're passively infusing grams of antibodies often, and they're expensive because of that. So what we do is, the vaccine approach just turns your body, everyone's body, into its own little bioreactor. So you become the drug factory. So we democratize, just like Uber in some ways democratized the private driver by making everyone able to be a private driver. Mm-hmm. Vaxxinity, the technology, makes everyone into its own little biologics factory. Conceptually, it's very simple and elegant. I would say that it's not trivial to do it successfully and safely. So the trick really, we're not the first ones to pursue this. but we're the first ones to see, at least I believe, it be able to be done in humans safely and consistently. So the body is super smart. The immune system is so much more advanced than any machine that we've built or that we even understand today. And it has a unique capability to protect itself, right? So human evolution says that we shouldn't attack ourselves. And as a result, we don't like to create antibodies against self-proteins. The problem is that as we get older and as we've used medicine to extend our lifespan, into 70s, 80s, 90s, even longer, certain biologic processes break down. And it's actually the things that our bodies build ourselves that end up killing us, hence chronic diseases. So the challenge with vaccines is, can you get your body to overcome immune tolerance and produce antibody drugs against yourself? And that's what we've been able to show. So hopefully that's where you're thinking about conceptually about why we can democratize health. And then the premise behind it is, a little more complicated.
Well, yeah. So, and maybe this is where that complication lies. My next question, as you were talking about this vaccine approach, again, I've only been in the space for a few years now. Not a scientist, don't have a biologics manufacturing background, but from what I've read and learned over the last couple of years, the vaccine space, which kind of when I started pre-pandemic, I actually had I commented to a sort of an old timer colleague of mine. The first 6 months of my job, I didn't talk to anyone about vaccines. It was before COVID reared its head, and all of a sudden, vaccines were it. Everyone was talking about vaccines, and I asked him, you've been around for a long time, like, was there ever a time when vaccines were sexy, as a business proposition? And the response was, and this is going to lead to my question. The response was, no, not really. Not maybe since I don't know, Gardasil made a splash back in the day, whatever. Like, but the response was basically like, vaccines are long development cycles. They're arduous. They're high. Everything's highly regulated, but the regulatory process to take a vaccine to approval was a long and arduous road. It was expensive, right? Like it wasn't a darling. Vaccines were not a darling of the investment community because sort of a, long tail bet, there was going to be a quick return on it, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. Well, then all of a sudden, we're faced with a global pandemic. Vaccines are the response, the answer, and they become cool again. All that is to say, this concept to address chronic diseases with vaccine technology, do any of those things that I just mentioned about why vaccines were not, popular or perhaps well-funded or, discussed much for a long period of time, create challenges to the mission at Vaxxinity?
Sure. I mean, I'd be silly not to say yes, because there are challenges to any drug development. So I guess two things. First is the way we conceptualize vaccine is different than the traditional concept, right? Today, there are no vaccines against chronic diseases licensed. So everything that we know about vaccines, which we consider the first biologic revolution, they revolutionized medicine for infectious diseases. So these are all external pathogens, right? Like COVID. And when you're preventing something like that, there's thousands, tens of thousands of patients, and you have to, run these studies for a long time, or at least long enough that you can see, a difference between the different placebo and drug arms. Most of the applications that we think of in terms of Vaxxinity are different. They're in a therapeutic context for biologics, right, for chronic diseases. So our regulatory pathway is actually very similar to a traditional biologic or mAb. Mm-hmm. CGRP and PCSK9, these are things for migraine and hypercholesteremia. They're very well-defined endpoints. Like we just go in with the same development plan, very similar as our monoclonal competitor. So from that sense, it's different. The only one that I would say is challenging. It's not because it's a vaccine, but it's because of the disease state, and that's neurodegeneration. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are challenging diseases, as we've seen.
Yeah.
And more research is going towards, you got to prevent it before symptoms even begin. So when you're thinking of a decade-long plus disease and preventing it, those are challenging, what you would call long tails.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think it's because it's a vaccine as much as the fact that the disease is difficult. And in fact, vaccines may be the most and best way to attack them, period.
When you're striving to excel in a new arena, the best guides are the ones already doing it well. The Business of Biotech brings those voices forward to help new and emerging biopharmas turn their innovations, like mRNA and cell and gene therapies, into clinical realities. Tune in and subscribe for insights on hiring, regulatory, and other need-to-know topics for biopharma leaders. The podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Cytiva. Check out their resources at cytiva.com/emerging biotech. That's CYTIVA.com/emerging biotech. Thank you for that clarification. And also it brings to mind another question. Maybe we can talk about this when we talk a little bit more about some of the candidates and indications, but I talk about sort of the influence of sort of the historical perspective on vaccine development. You did a great job clarifying for me why this is different. Then you bring up Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And I'm wondering, given the past, 12 months, I think within 12 months, the news cycle around Aduhelm and, all we keep doing as a community is reproving just how difficult Alzheimer's in particular is, right? In terms of the approvals that we're seeing around that indication. So is that an uphill battle? It's sort of you give me a quick response. Like the market, I guess the go-to-market approach on an Alzheimer's drug do stories like that create an uphill battle?
Oh, sure. I would be lying if I said that whole Aduhelm launch didn't, bring everyone on a roller coaster ride. But at the end of the day, if you think about if that product was launched, let's just say a similar product was launched, but you didn't have the safety side effects, and you had a price that wouldn't, bankrupt the healthcare system. I bet you that the reception and the enthusiasm would be very different. But it's challenging. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, they're diseases of the brain. And most of the drugs that we have for the brain, we don't even know what the mechanism of action is. Thankfully, for both of those, there is genetic links, right? Genetics don't lie. We just have to figure out how to develop clinical development plans around that. So I think the targets, I'm still a big amyloid fan because I think that genetics ultimately speak the truth. And we're just trying to figure out how to show it, right, in a classic research trial. But ultimately, when you get on there, because the disease is so big, that's actually where democratization matters more. Mm-hmm. I wake up a lot and I look at colleagues in Alzheimer's and there are a lot of people working on it, right? But no one is working on a treatment that is with the intention of being able to distribute and make it accessible to everyone that needs it. So that's where we're unique. I think we're also unique because we're probably one of the only ones that can prevent neurodegenerative diseases globally, which is the most important, right? Not only preventing, but being able to make it accessible globally, because it's not just a US disease. These things don't discriminate.
Right.
So I went off on a tangent, but you gave me permission too early.
I did. Well, I warned you that I would, and I welcomed you to do the same. So, welcome to the Tangential Thinking Podcast. This gives me, I guess, a couple of segue options. We can either start talking a little bit about the candidates themselves. You know what? Let's not do that. I want to stick with the original intent to learn about the philosophical approach. And the next word that I want to pick on a little bit, not pick on, but just kind of throw out there and gain some understanding around Vaxxinity's use of is the word revolution. So the third biologics revolution is kind of central to the mantra there. I see it time and time again in your copy. Tell us about that. Like, is this well, first of all, very, very simple kind of name. Is this acknowledgement that, vaccines were the first biologic revolution? I think antibodies were monoclonal antibodies were the second, and that vaccines for chronic disease is the third. Is this a Vaxxinity thing, or is this maybe something that's embraced by the broader community?
I think it's both, right?
Okay.
I think it's hard to challenge the idea that vaccines weren't a revolution, right? They are, there are now over 20 some vaccine preventable diseases. Over 80% of the world is vaccinated. And I would posit that because of the success of vaccines, it's contributed to our doubling of our health span, our life expectancy over the last century, just over a century. So it's made profound impact on human society. Now, because of that success, chronic diseases now kill us more than everything else combined. So like famine, war, bacteria, just like, external foes. Now our body itself is killing our, chronic diseases is the leading killer everywhere in the world, by the way. And so that's where the second biologic revolution comes in, monoclonals. I mean, they are like the magic drug, right? If you can get them, they're great. And I think they're a revolution of itself. They're 7 of the top 10 selling drugs, ex-COVID. And it's meaningful. I think it was a real miracle to be able to produce them artificially in bioreactors. It's a very complicated process that we figured out how to do. The challenge, though, as I mentioned before, is that they're difficult. They're difficult to take, difficult to make. They're extremely expensive. I think the average cost of a new biologic is about $100,000 a year. So as a result, less than 2% in the US and 1% worldwide are currently on them. So, when we think about the third biologic revolution, it's just combining the two. So bringing the efficiency of vaccines, which are convenient, they're affordable. Like I said, 80% of the world has been vaccinated. So they reach every end of the earth. Okay, even places where they don't have electricity, right, or running water, people are vaccinated. But taking those and applying them to chronic diseases, I think that's going to be one of the biggest changes in our health expectancy. And the idea also of moving towards prevention of chronic diseases, of maintaining our health despite our body, breaking down. That's the next frontier. So that's what we mean. That's what I mean when I say the third biologic revolution.
Yeah. So follow-on question to a point you just made about distribution and access, and this is more of a sort of technical question, but what's your approach in terms of supply chain and distribution with the technology that you're working on? I think, and again, we need to differentiate between traditional vaccines. Right now, everybody's thinking about the COVID vaccine and cold chain storage and the challenges therein. What's your answer to the vaccine approach for chronic diseases and chronic conditions and their prevalence globally, and your approach to getting I guess those therapies distributed?
Yeah, so we're a vaccine, which means that we're small doses. They last long, so you don't have to take them all the time. And unlike the mRNA stuff, we're at normal cold chain storage. So it's a fortunate thing based on the technology. It's enabled by the technology. But my goal is to get to every corner, just like a traditional vaccine would be able to get to. Pretty much anywhere you can get a cold Diet Coke or fresh flowers, we could deliver our vaccines.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, put things in context. So back to the revolutionary, third biologic revolution discussion. One of the other things that strikes me about Vaxxinity's, I guess, embrace of the revolution concept is just how, I guess, tightly it seems to be woven into the corporate culture there. And the company's, I mean, you've grown as this company has evolved and branched out. It's grown considerably. How much? What's your head count now?
We're about 100. So
Yeah.
we're small, but I like it. It's right sized.
Right. Yep. And you've got so 100. You've got a pretty stout, C-suite, some good folks in on the management team there. But I guess the point I'm making is the perception is as though this democratization revolution culture is really tight there. It seems to be on point with starting with you and Lou, and right on down through the line. That's not an easy thing to maintain. I mean, I'm 47. I've worked for a lot of different companies, and I've seen, like, I've worked for this one for a long time, and I've seen the culture roller coaster. Like, we're at a really great place right now in this company. Like, our culture is terrific, but there was a time when I can't say the same. So maintenance of any company culture is a difficult thing. And when you're as bold as Vaxxinity is to say, we're going to go out there and really change the biologics paradigm, we're going to do something revolutionary, it's got to be difficult. So I'm using a lot of words right now, but you get my point. What's the secret sauce for you and Lou to maintaining momentum there?
I don't think there's a secret sauce. It's just, we have a very attractive and inspiring mission that we believe in. And we attract people that believe in it also. I mean, this isn't just a job, right? We don't want you to come here for a paycheck. You can get those lots of places. Mm-hmm. You want to have to believe that you're part of something bigger. And I think when people find their greater purpose, it stops. It's still a job, but it becomes more than a job, right? For me, it's life's passion now. It's grander purpose, and there's something really fulfilling about that. But it's hard. I think relationships are the hardest part of life, right? And they require a tremendous amount of maintenance. And so, we're out there talking about it all the time. And I think it's important. So, I think it's the most important thing, people, frankly, and selecting the right people and building your tribe is important. And so, we're still like a founder-led culture. We're still like a startup culture. I was telling you before, we're out here in Montana, and we hold our retreats here, and we get everyone off the grid, living in teepees and airstreams and bonding and, speaking at late night fires and stuff. And that's the culture, right? Yeah. We want to be, we are different, and we're not afraid to be different. In fact, we say that you have to embrace it. So embrace the differences, embrace your eccentricities, and enjoy them.
Yeah, but yeah, which is awesome and appreciated and understood. At the same time, when you create such a unique culture, perhaps you open yourself up to the likelihood of not so great fit, maybe more frequently, sure. Right? So, yeah. Because the expectation, so you have this amazing culture and amazing approach to maintaining it. You also have a very, very bold mission, and I can only imagine a ton of expectation on the people that you are employing to execute on that mission. Like, it's not an easy task. You, Mei Mei, strike me as someone who I would, I guess I'd classify you as someone, again, I don't know you super well, but you would be incredibly exciting and incredibly challenging to work for. Like, you would challenge me.
I hope so.
Right. Like, but because the mission is so bold. So I guess, how do you, does it become challenging sort of for you as the CEO to find the right people, maintain the right people, and maybe even like let the wrong people know, when they're the wrong people?
So absolutely. All of the above. So I'm probably I consider myself like a servant leader. My biggest calling is being able to help others do their job as best as they can. And same thing I tell my kids is like, so long as you're doing your best and you act with integrity, you can never be disappointed in yourself. That's all you can give, right? So that's all one can ask for. Again, we have the fortune of having this North Star. And so if you ever, feeling like, what can I do? Look to the North Star, and it'll give you the conviction to do the right thing. And so long as you're doing the right thing for the company, again, we can't, you know, can't be upset really. You can be disappointed. Things cannot work out. That happens everywhere, and that's life. So we got to figure out how to deal with the ups and downs. I think one of the most challenging things is also like figuring out when it doesn't work and being okay with it, right? I think, you know, culture is very funny. We have a culture book. I took the time to write a culture book, and it's very important to Lou and I that everyone reads it, because it's an expression of who we are. But, you know, we don't expect everyone to be the same. In fact, if you look at our team, it's very diverse, but we're all coalescing around the mission. So people are, you know, you do those personality charts and they kind of fit all over the place. So we try to get a good span. I think diversity of opinion and approach is important, and frankly, tension is important. I don't shy away from argument. I grew up in a very argumentative household. I think respect is one of those things where you tell someone what you really think and you don't hold back. That is the true definition of respect, if you respect the other person. So, you know, not everyone fits in, and that's okay. And sometimes it can still work. But you know, it's hard. It's constant maintenance, but it's also exciting. It's also the most enjoyable part.
Yeah.
So oftentimes there's always two, you know, faces of a coin. So the most enjoyable part, which is the people you work with, is also, you know, the thing that you have to invest the most time in also.
Yeah. Well, thank you for indulging that follow-up question. I probably blindsided you with that one, but I appreciate it.
It's fine. Like I said, I don't prepare. So these are just off the cuff. So you're getting what's in my brain, for better or for worse.
That's awesome. All right. So I want to, in the time that we have left, I want to spend some time talking about the candidates that you guys are working on. Maybe get a clinical update on your candidates, and I don't know, you know, so you've done a good job sort of giving us an understanding of what democratization means and how that is being facilitated or enabled at Vaxxinity. But maybe you can just give us a little bit, as we talk about each candidate, maybe you can just give us along with a clinical update or preclinical, if there are preclinical candidates, maybe just a little bit of commentary on I guess the democratized attributes of those specific candidates, like how you intend with those specific candidates to move that down the field. Yeah, we started talking about Alzheimer's. So UB311 is your Alzheimer's vaccine candidate, received FDA fast track designation. Give us an update there.
Yeah, so we've finished phase 2 in Alzheimer's, and you know it looks really promising. We're attacking what we think is the right target, these toxic oligomers, before they, you know, try to get to the thing that's actually causing toxicity in the brain. And so in terms of clinical milestone, we're approved and we have a protocol for the next stage, which we're calling a phase 2b/3, you know, at the FDA. And in terms of democratization, I mean, what we're looking to do with the program is slow the decline, the cognitive decline, and ultimately slow the onset of actual Alzheimer's. So prevent Alzheimer's before you even get there, right? But the democratization aspect is providing it where it can be accessible and convenient to everyone. So one of the things of prevention, and this, not to jump around, but applies to all neurodegenerative diseases, right? Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The field has moved towards prevention as the most effective way to tackle these. But if you use a traditional monoclonal, it's very challenging. Okay, so imagine you're a healthy 60-year-old, and I have this proposition for you. Hey, I want you to go in for the rest of your life once a month and sit there for a couple hours and get infused with this antibody. You know, hey, there might be some side effects like brain swelling, you know, dizziness, confusion. You're healthy, by the way, right? Not showing any symptoms. And by the way, it's going to cost you $50,000 a year, plus infusion costs. You'd be like, what? I mean,
I'll roll the dice. I'll roll the dice. Thanks.
Yeah. But when you move it to a vaccine, right? It's like the proposition changes. It's, hey, you know what? I'm going to ask you to go in like once a year, maybe once a quarter, and take something like a flu shot. You might even be able to get it at your local pharmacy, right? It's safe. You're not going to feel anything really, but it's going to be working in your brain to prevent, these toxic proteins from forming. And guess what? Like, it's nominal. I don't even want to put a price on it, but it's completely affordable, right? Less than your deductible. That's a much more palatable proposition for both the patient as well as the healthcare system, right? And so that's where the democratization aspect comes from. Because of the technology, we're able to attack this Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease in a different way and make it accessible to everyone. So,
yeah, very good. And what's so that's fast track designation. You said you're going into phase 2B.
Yeah, 2B. So it's a well-powered efficacy study, basically to show that we can reproduce the results that we had in our last phase 2. So the other, the phase 2A, we showed awesome promising data that we can slow cognitive decline by 50%, but we want to do it in large numbers. So that's the idea. And I think the safety is going to be important. The efficacy is important, and not to bounce around, but I like to bucket them. We're in our Parkinson's trial right now. We're just finishing up our phase 1 part B in actual patients. And the goal there is to show that, one, it's safe, but that the vaccine does what we intended to do, which is get your body to be a bioreactor, develop these antibodies against really specific, toxic proteins in your brain that can cross the blood-brain barrier into the CSF where this action's happening, and that we can do it safely. So
and that's UB312, the Parkinson's candidate, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
We're trying to get better at naming. But
yeah, well, no, I just, I figured I'd throw it out there for reference in case anyone wants to do any follow-up research on these candidates. And then you still got the COVID-19 booster candidate. Is that, so that's UB612. Is that COVID-19 booster? Is that like a remnant or carry on from the COVAX days?
Yeah, it's the same product that we started developing, COVAX. It's a heterologous booster, right? And the trial, we're in a phase 3 global platform trial. The idea is we're showing that we can boost other technologies. So we can boost mRNA vaccines. If you had an AZ vaccine, we could boost that. If you've had it inactivated, like Sinopharm, we can boost that. So we're showing that we could basically be a universal booster. Why does it matter? It's because COVID's still out there. A number of reasons. COVID's still out there. It's probably not going to leave us. We're already getting into this mindset of regular boosters, and there are some key differentiators for our vaccine. The one that I think is super important, that time will tell, is safety. Right? Ours don't really have that same reactogenicity. It doesn't get you flu-like symptoms. It's less than 10% of people get these systemic responses, like putting you out for the day.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a difference. And from the efficacy side, we seem to have really good resilience against mutations. So, we tested against alpha, beta, delta, gamma, Omicron 2, and we get really nice responses. And it's probably because of the regions that we're selecting are conserved. So, and then lastly is distributability. Right. I think we mentioned before, but we want to be able to get to every corner of the world that needs it. So. Yep.
Very good. Those are, all important points, particularly around, patient response, and those mutations. I mean, they just keep coming. I was recently on a family vacation to Florida, and I came home and I was ill. It turned out it wasn't COVID, but I was so convinced that it was some new mutation from Florida, where mutation seems to run rampant.
Yeah. One other thing that I forgot to mention is actually durability. It's important.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not just that we're protecting against mutations, but that we do it for a reasonable period of time. So the data will tell, but our initial data seems like we got pretty long durability, probably twice as much as mRNA, maybe 3, even longer than the other one. So It would be nice if we didn't have to go in all the time and be worrying all the time.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. Booster fatigue is real, and it's not, it's not going to go away. So durability is important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then, okay. So then there are a couple others, UB313 for migraine.
Mhm.
You want to talk about that, or
Yeah.
about the PCSK9 program? You tell me what other programs are you
These
working on?
are awesome programs, and they haven't gotten as much light, but they're some of my favorite. Um, Everyone says that they don't have a favorite child, but they have the children are exceptional for different reasons.
Yeah.
So CGRP and PCSK9 are the essence of democratization because and the displacement of monoclonal antibodies. Okay, so both of these programs have approved monoclonals on the market, but they're expensive. And they're, as a result, they're none of them are first line treatments, right? So for migraine and for both of these, we go head to head with the monoclonals in our studies, and we want to make sure that we have similar efficacy as them. But the difference, the democratization aspect, is that we can produce them at a fraction of the cost. So our cost of goods is like 1% or less than a monoclonal, and they become very convenient. So rather than self-injecting every month or even going in for infusions, this is like an IM injection, just like a flu shot, right? And they last a long time. So the durability, it's like a long-acting biologic. So they're convenient to patients, and that's where the real accessibility comes in. So ultimately, that's where we think we have this major advantage, and we want them to become the first choice. So for UB313, which is our migraine, we want it to become the first choice for migraine sufferers around the world, to reclaim their lives. And we want to be able to bring the beauty of the CGRP mechanism, which is currently only available to US and developed world, to the rest of the world, because migraine is everywhere. With PCSK9, I don't know how much you know about this, but this is one of the most consistent biologies at reducing cholesterol, which has shown to be able to ultimately reduce, cardiac events and death. So imagine being able to vaccinate the world against heart attack and stroke, right? As a first line treatment, to be able to go out there and, improve the convenience off of statins and, match them or even beat them on price. You can vaccinate the world against heart attack and stroke and eliminate, majority of heart disease, which is still our leading killer, which is crazy because we know how to eliminate it. So that's why I get super pumped up about these two programs. The biology is already well understood, so the probability of success is super high. But we're just coming in with a different technology, a different approach that is really harnessing this democratization aspect.
Yeah. You, I don't get the sense that you get too excited about the little stuff. I mean, not I don't mean that in a critical way, but like you, it's clear to me that Mei Mei Hu is excited by big challenges that need to be addressed, like the big picture stuff.
Well, I get excited by all sorts of stuff, but yeah, the big picture stuff is stuff that challenges me all the time. So and it's a thing that requires a team. So it's just fun. It's fun to be challenged every day, and it's fun to be working on something that is so much larger than yourself that you can never figure out all by yourself. And so it's constantly a puzzle and keeps life interesting.
Yeah. I've been all over. I've taken you all over the map in this conversation. I keep shifting gears. I keep having those ooh shiny moments where I take us off track. What have I missed? What have I failed to ask you that's important to the Vaxxinity story that you might want to conclude with and make sure that you get across?
Oh, I think you've done an awesome job. I love just the authenticity of the conversation of just like going back and forth. Our story is pretty simple at the end of the day, and it's, I hate to beat it again. It's democratizing health and through technology, right? Technology has enabled every major transformation in history, So to think that it's not going to be a technology that does that again is crazy. And I acknowledge that what we're doing is bold, and lots of people say it's crazy. It's an unorthodox business model, especially in biotech, but it doesn't mean that it's not worth doing.
Yeah.
And so our biggest challenge is sharing the story and showing people that it's possible, and that it makes sense, and that it's worth doing. And so I thank you for this conversation, allowing another platform to kind of share that.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to. Like I said, I was intrigued by you and your leadership style and your company and the work that you and Lou are doing. A couple of years ago, when it was Rob Wright, who I think he did like an executive virtual roundtable featuring you. And then, as I may have noted, I don't know if I noted it while we were recording or not, but if listeners are interested in Vaxxinity and Mei Mei and the work that she and Lou are doing, they were featured on the cover of Life Science Leader. I don't recall off the top of my head exactly what what issue that was, but it was, I think, within the last year. Life Science Leader cover story.
Yeah, it was last year sometime.
Yeah. So check that out. But yeah, thank you for entertaining my question set. I do want to have you back on the show again, because as you were talking, I kept on coming up with follow-up questions that perhaps would take us down into a different world that would warrant their own 40-minute or 50-minute conversation, like around financing and fundraising, for instance, in your IPO. Because when you do unorthodox things and have great big visions, it takes a certain kind of investment community to get behind that. And I want to learn more about that, how you've kind of gone down that path, but not right now. So I'm going to just throw that teaser out there.
All right.
I'll have you back on the show at some point when you're ready to talk about that. But I enjoyed it as well. I appreciate the time. We'll be paying attention to you guys. And as I said, hopefully catch up with you again soon.
Awesome. I'd love to. And anytime, Matt.
So that's Vaxxinity CEO Mei Mei Hu. I'm Matt Pillar, and this is the Business of Biotech. We're produced by Bioprocess Online in partnership with Cytiva, whose commitment to emerging biopharma innovation is on full display at cytiva.com/emerging biotech. Check that out. Check us out at bioprocessonline.com, where I invite you to subscribe to my newsletter. And if you enjoy the Business of Biotech and you like hearing from the leaders of the companies that are innovating in biopharma, please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing. And as always, thanks for listening.